You're a solid engineer, your code runs, your systems scale, you deliver features on time. So why do you keep choking on Amazon's behavioral questions? Here's the reality that most candidates miss. Amazon doesn't hire smart people and hope they work out. They hire people who think like Amazon. And that mindset is something you can prepare for. Let's reframe what's actually happening in that interview room. Every question, every follow-up, every pause is a test against their 16 leadership principles. These aren't nice to have values plastered on a wall. They're the operating system. When an interviewer asks, "Tell me about a time you disagreed with your manager," they're not curious about conflict resolution. They're probing for have backbone, disagree, and commit. Do you challenge respectfully? Do you commit once decisions are made? Can you think bigger than your own ego? Here's your first move. Audit your stories against the principles, not your resume. Most candidates prep anecdotes about achievements. Wrong approach. Amazon wants to hear how you think through problems. For every story in your head, ask, which principle does this demonstrate? That time you fixed a production outage at 2 a.m., that's not just dedication. That's ownership and deliver results. The time you pushed back on a rushed feature? That's earn trust and bias for action. Rewrite your mental scripts. Lead with the principle, then the story. Second move, master the STAR method, but the Amazon version. You know. Situation, task, action, result. Amazon expects more. Situation needs context, what was at stake, task needs clarity, what was your specific responsibility. Action is where most candidates fail. This should be 60% of your answer. What did you specifically do? Not we deployed, not the team decided. I analyzed the metrics, I proposed the solution, I drove the implementation, I measured the outcome. And result needs metrics. How did you measure success? What improved? If you can't quantify it, it didn't happen. Let me give you a concrete example. The question, tell me about a time you had to dive deep to solve a problem. Weak answer, we had a slow service, so we profiled it, found the bottleneck, and fixed it. That's missing everything. Strong answer, situation, our checkout service was timing out during peak traffic, costing us an estimated $50K per hour in lost transactions. Task, as the backend lead, I owned identifying the root cause and implementing a fix within 24 hours. Action, I started by isolating the problem. Was it network, application, or database? I instrumented our code to trace request latency and discovered the database layer was the bottleneck. But which query? I enabled slow query logging and found a specific query was doing full table scans on a 1,000,000-row customer history table. I proposed an index strategy, but first I needed to validate it wouldn't impact write performance. I set up a staging environment with production data, ran the index creation, measured the impact, and confirmed read times dropped by 85% with negligible write overhead. I then implemented the fix in production during our maintenance window. Result: checkout latency dropped from an average of 3.2 seconds to 400 milliseconds. The timeout rate fell from 12% to under 0.5%. Based on this pattern, I created a playbook for diagnosing performance issues that our team still uses today. Notice what that answer shows. Dive deep. Yes, you went multiple layers deep. Ownership. You owned the problem end to end. Deliver results. You fixed it fast with measurable impact. Bias for action. You didn't wait for permission to investigate. Invent and simplify. You created a playbook for future incidents. One well-crafted story demonstrates multiple principles. That's the goal. Third move, prepare failure stories. Yes, actual failures. Amazon doesn't expect perfection. They expect growth. Tell me about a time you missed a commitment. Isn't a trap. It's an opening. Weak answer, I once committed to a deadline I couldn't meet because of scope creep, but I worked extra hours and delivered on time. That's not a failure. That's a fake success masquerading as growth. Strong answer, situation. I committed to delivering a new feature by the end of Q2. Task, I was the sole engineer on this project, and I estimated it would take 6 weeks. Action, 3 weeks in, I realized I'd underestimated the complexity. The data model I'd chosen couldn't support a key requirement we discovered. I had 2 choices, push for the deadline with a compromised solution, or communicate the delay and rebuild properly. I chose to communicate. I set up a meeting with my manager and the product owner, explained the gap, showed them the technical trade-offs, and proposed a new timeline of 8 weeks. I also outlined what I'd cut to maintain the original date if they insisted on it. They chose quality over speed. I then implemented the fix, delivered the feature 2 weeks late, but it's been in production for 18 months with 0 critical bugs. Result, because I communicated early, stakeholders could adjust their plans. I also changed my estimation process to always include a technical spike phase before committing to timelines. That's ownership. That's learn and be curious. That's earn trust. Candidates who spin failures into fake successes get rejected. The ones who show self-awareness and growth get offers. Fourth move, think customer, not technology. When they ask, describe a difficult problem you solved, don't start with the tech stack, start with the customer pain. Customers were abandoning checkout because payment processing took too long. Then go into the technical solution. Customer obsession isn't a principle. It's the lens through which every decision is made. If your story lacks the customer dimension, it's incomplete. Here's what I mean. Weak answer. We migrated our monolith to microservices using Kubernetes and improved our deployment pipeline. That's a technology tour. Strong answer. Our customers were waiting up to 30 seconds for page loads during peak hours. Our support tickets were through the roof. I led the initiative to break our monolith into services, which reduced page load time to under 2 seconds and cut support tickets by 60%. Same technical work, totally different framing. One shows you like shiny tech, the other shows you care about customer experience. Fifth move, embrace the dive deep. Amazon interviewers drill down, way down. Why did you choose that database? What were the trade-offs? What would you do differently now? They're testing intellectual honesty and technical rigor. Don't bluff. If you don't know, say it. I'm not sure about that specific detail, but here's how I'd investigate it. Bias for action doesn't mean rushing, it means moving forward with the right information. When you say, I don't know, you show honesty. When you follow with, here's how I'd find out, you show resourcefulness. That combination is what they're looking for. Sixth move, earn trust by disagreeing respectfully. This is where many engineers crash and burn. When an interviewer asks about a disagreement, they're not looking for drama, they're looking for backbone without ego. Weak answer, my manager wanted to use technology X, but I knew technology Y was better, so I pushed back hard and eventually they agreed. That sounds confrontational. Strong answer, my manager proposed a solution using technology X. I had concerns about scalability given our growth projections. Instead of just pushing back, I built a quick prototype with both options, measured the performance difference, and presented the data. I said, here's what I found. Technology X works now, but technology Y will save us an estimated $200K in infrastructure costs over the next year. If there are reasons to prefer X that I'm missing, I want to understand them. My manager appreciated the data-driven approach, and we went with Y. But what mattered is that I committed fully to the decision once it was made, even though I'd initially disagreed. That's have backbone, disagree and commit. That's earn trust. That's think big. Seventh move, know the common mistakes and avoid them. Mistake number 1, being vague. I worked on a team that built a great product. So what? What did you do? Mistake number 2, taking credit for everything. I single-handedly saved the company. Nobody believes that. Mistake number 3, being a victim. My team didn't support me, management didn't give me resources, the timeline was unrealistic. That shows lack of ownership. Mistake number 4, no metrics. The project was successful. How do you know? Mistake number 5, reciting principles instead of demonstrating them. This shows my ownership and my customer obsession. Let the interviewer conclude that. Your job is to tell the story that proves it. Here's the hard part. This isn't about memorizing 16 principles and reciting them like a manifesto. It's about internalizing a different way of thinking. Most engineers operate in reactive mode. Solve the ticket, ship the feature, move to the next. Amazon operates in principle mode. Why are we building this? What's the customer value? What happens if this fails? Are we thinking big enough? That mental shift takes practice. Some of your best stories won't fit. Some will feel forced. That's normal. But here's something most prep guides don't tell you. Reading the interviewer matters. Amazon trains interviewers to look for specific signals. When they ask a follow-up, they're either curious or skeptical. What was the business impact? Means you didn't establish stakes. What did other team members think? Means you might be overstating your role. How did you measure that? Means your metrics are vague. These aren't traps. They're invitations to clarify. If an interviewer seems to be drilling into one area of your story, they might be testing for dive deep. If they keep bringing the conversation back to customer impact, they're checking for customer obsession. Read the room. Pivot accordingly. Another hard truth, you might not be right for Amazon. That's okay. The principles aren't universal truths. They're Amazon's truth. If you thrive in environments where execution speed matters more than deep analysis, Amazon might feel bureaucratic to you. If you prefer clear hierarchies over distributed leadership, the lean on your best judgment culture might be frustrating. The interview works both ways. You're assessing whether you can thrive in their system as much as they're assessing whether you fit it. This week, pick one principle and rewrite one of your stories around it. Maybe it's ownership for that project you dragged across the finish line. Maybe it's invent and simplify for that time you cut a 20-step process down to 3. Actually write it out. Practice saying it aloud. The goal isn't perfection, it's fluency. When the principle becomes the lens through which you see your work, the answers flow naturally. You don't need to memorize stories, you just need to remember what they prove. If this is helping you prepare, subscribe for more breakdowns like this. And drop a comment, which leadership principle trips you up the most? Let's tackle it together. See you next time.